Today we will be discussing the demographics of the Star Wars galaxy, and just how many sentient beings could realistically live out their lives in a galaxy far, far away. The baseline population information for today's video comes from a couple sources. First, and most importantly, we will be drawing from the Essential Atlas. Although this may not be canon, the new canon has not delved into galactic demographics to my knowledge. So this will be a legends-based video. The Essential Atlas has a population map that divides the galaxy into 8 population categories. Starting from the inner core, we have worlds with 500 billion individuals or higher, 100 to 500 billion, 10 to 100 billion, 1 to 10 billion, 500 million to 1 billion, and so on, all the way down to the smallest category, which is 1 million to 10 million inhabitants per system. Although 1 million people sounds like a lot, if your system has less than that, you are not even included in the list of populated systems. This should give the first indication of the kind of scale we are working on. The first thing I would do with this map is to change the highest population category. The reason for this is that people vastly underestimate the population of Coruscant. It has been listed as a planet with 1 trillion people, but a couple of videos on ecumenopolises, or world cities, have shown that this number would give a world city with either huge living quarters per person or vast spaces without inhabitants. While Coruscant is certainly not residential space entirely, it is clearly packed with beings over large chunks of the planet. To begin our exploration of Coruscant's population, we turn to Star Wars, Complete Locations, which gives Coruscant's diameter at 12,240 kilometers. This is comparable to Earth's, which is 12,742 kilometers. Not sure why they chose that number, so if anyone wants to enlighten me in the comments section, I'd love to see why they chose a number almost exactly 500 kilometers smaller than Earth's. Given the diameter of Coruscant, we can calculate its surface area, which comes out at 470.7 million kilometers squared. Now, let's decide on population density. The density on Coruscant would vary both vertically, level by level, and horizontally across differently zoned parts of the planet. But to start, let's look at the population density of Manhattan Island. Its density is 28,154 people per kilometer squared. Multiply that by the number of square kilometers available to build a worldwide Manhattan-level city, and we have reached a population level of 13 trillion people. That already outpaces the 1 trillion stated population by an order of magnitude. Alright, but Coruscant is way taller than New York City, right? According to Star Wars, Everything You Need to Know, which I guess has everything you need to know, it has a maximum of 5,127 levels. However, levels 1 through 4 are apparently uninhabitable. So we are working with 5,123 levels, to be extremely precise. On top of that, we have skyscrapers, some of which reach up to 6,000 meters into the sky. So that adds another 2,000 or so floors for the taller buildings. Add that to the levels below, and we have about 7,123 floors at maximum, although this would only be at select points of the city. Let's cut the 2,000 floor buildings number in half to account for what perhaps an average skyscraper crust might be. So now we have about 6,123 floors to put people in. So the average number of floors per building in New York City is about 18.7, according to skyscraperpage.com. This is only taking an average of buildings that meet the 10-story mark, however, but those buildings make up over half of all floors in New York City, so I'm just going to go with that. Okay, so the population density per square kilometer of New York City is spread over an average of 19 floors, or levels, as I will consider it. But wait, you might say, levels aren't the same as skyscraper floors, you aren't accounting for all the airspace between skyscrapers. Sure, I say to that, although remember that the levels of Coruscant probably contain plenty of room for things other than living and working space. They need giant air scrubbers and ways to power both atmospheric controls and all the other things you need to live, as well as mechanisms to get rid of the heat that all of this produces. More on that later. So maybe this would cut down on the living space per level. I think it would. Additionally, we need to account for the parts of Coruscant that are not as densely populated. Places like the Works, an abandoned industrial area, or recreational areas such as artificial seas and parks, or things like the Jedi Temple and Senate building. So I'm just going to use Manhattan's density as a proxy for the density of Coruscant, from level 5 to the tops of the skyscrapers. Okay, so we have 19 floors of people for our base population estimate of 13 trillion. We will need to multiply that by 322.26 to account for 6,123 levels of Coruscant, giving us 4.12 quadrillion people. Then again, the average 1,000-story skyscraper crest on the surface may be misleading, since levels would have a much higher population density than the skyscrapers with all the space between them. However, I was going with the population density of Manhattan at 19 stories average height for each set of 19 Coruscant levels. This would probably be an underestimate, honestly, so I'm just going to leave the skyscraper crust in. Remember, although I'm trying to be fairly accurate with the numbers, it's still a rough estimate. So there we have it. About 4 quadrillion people could potentially live on Coruscant. And that's not even multiplying the square kilometers of surface area by the population density of the most dense cities on Earth, such as Manila, Philippines, which has a population density per square kilometer that's 1.5 times larger than Manhattan's. One problem with that many people, as pointed out in Isaac Arthur's video on ecumenopolises, is that bodies produce a lot of heat, not even accounting for on-world industries or the heat produced by moving stuff to and from the planet. 1 quadrillion bodies would produce about 10 to the 17th watts of heat, if we consider human bodies as 100-watt space heaters. Isaac Arthur points out that this is close to the amount of radiation that the Earth absorbs from the Sun, or the Earth's solar budget. He points out that with our current Earth level of technology, we wouldn't be able to host more than about 10 trillion people without starting to experience some serious heat problems. But luckily, we are talking about the Star Wars galaxy, where they have faster than light travel that seems to rely on wormholes or an alternate dimension, aka hyperspace. So I'm going to hand wave the heat problem by saying that if they could send starships into an alternate dimension, they ought to have mechanisms to send excess heat energy into hyperspace to effectively vent it. This doesn't come from any legends or canon sources that I'm aware of, but if someone really wanted to tackle the ecumenopolis heat problem in the expanded universe, then this is what I would expect them to go with.
So that concludes our exploration of Coruscant's population. 4 quadrillion beings somehow or another living out their lives on this planet, the capital planet. Next time we'll be looking at the entire galaxy and looking at how different segments of the galaxy's astrographic area stack up in terms of population compared to Coruscant and other areas in the inner, mid, and outer rims.